bewitching hour of 9 o'clock here on Halloween. That's it?
No, that was great.
Boo, boo, okay. Did you get that, Jimmy?
Seeing if everybody's still.
I got it.
Zero response. So at this time, we're going to open up our work session for October 31st, 2017. And if everyone could please either silence or turn off their cell phones at this time, and then join us in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Denise, I think he has some changes.
We do, we have 4 additions.
Okay.
Mr. Berman has brought forward a lease, a commercial lease with the school district number 7 and Railroad Bridge bid recommendation. The sheriff and undersheriff have brought forward corrections sergeant request, and Commissioner Winters has brought forward building official potential approval.
Okay. What was that one just before Commissioner Winters?
Corrections sergeant.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Mhm.
okay.
So what do you give you the updated?
Oh, that's all right. I was writing away. So, Commissioner Winters.
Yeah, our speakers aren't on. There. Ms. Thorstead.
Follow on the job.
So I brought forward an addition, building official, contract, and building official position. First, I'd like to say how proud I am of Jennifer Stevens for her work that she's done, going through the classes, and she will be getting a certificate for being a building official. At this point, Klamath County building official who we contract with retired as of this week. And by law, we have to have a building official. So the contract we have with Klamath County has a 30-day notice for cancellation. So I got 2 things for action today. First thing is I'd like to, I don't know if we have to do motion or just support. I'd say motion to be correct, to terminate the agreement with Klamath County for building official effective December 1. That'd be 30 days notice. So,
I'll second that.
all right.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to do the cancellation for the building services contract with Klamath County.
Okay.
Discussion.
Under discussion, I would like for the direction for that letter to go out from our HR department, Jay Collins, if he could not use for that to be who follows it up and makes that happen today.
Yeah, and you had discussion, I think, with Klamath County on that.
Yes, I've talked with Commissioner Donnie Boyd.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
With that, there's a $1,800 per month cost of that contract, not to exceed, I believe, $22,000 a year. So that's savings to the county, partial savings to the county. But whenever what I want to do now is to make a motion to appoint Jennifer as a building official, effective as of today immediately. Will be under contract for a month with Klamath County. They will appoint their own building official through that 30-day contractual agreement. That'll give Jennifer somebody to work with a little bit. I don't know who they're going to appoint, how much experience they have. But so my motion would be to appoint Jennifer Stevens to the building official's position as her certification shows her qualifications. And for her to start out, I'd like to move it not all the way to the step 1 on the building official. I'd like to move it up halfway from her salary is today to halfway there, and after 6 months, if there's a positive review of her work and her certificate and the certifications that she has, to reevaluate that time and bring it all the way up. This is not adding any extra cost. Actually, it'll be savings because of bringing her up to even step 1 is less dollars than what we're paying contractually right now. So my motion is to move Jennifer into the building official's position, bring her halfway to the step one, and review with a positive review in 6 months for move up the.
So I'll second that. It's been moved and seconded to appoint Jennifer as the building official for Lake County, and her compensation on behalf of what it is moving towards step one of that position. We will have a 6-month review for consideration of any addition to that. In discussion, because we've been talking about this, and I know it's semantics to some, but the savings potentially won't be a savings relative to the fact that the county is facing a shortfall of $300,000 to $350,000. So,
Right.
yeah. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, get out of here.
Safe trip.
Yeah,
Have a
good
safe
job.
trip.
It
Yeah.
works, yeah.
Very proud of you.
When are you gonna get some
Yep.
matching shoes?
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner, for putting that to the first attention.
You bet she's got to get the right to go see that team and that daughter, so. Beth, how are you
Good
today?
morning, good, how are you?
Really good.
So I just have a contract amendment on the contract with the state public health. And it's for communicable disease program, so it's an increase of funds. And basically, this is just brings us up to what we normally get every year from them, which is around $9,000 for our, it's called State Support for Public Health, but it's to be used for communicable disease, PE1.
Okay.
And my understanding, and you probably know for sure, but it's not, this amount may be adjusted again depending on what they approve or don't approve with the final state budget.
Okay.
But right now, this is what they're gonna give us.
Okay. Very good. Well,
We got 2,000 the first quarter already, so
Oh.
yeah, so it's around that 9,000. It's what they're offering us or saying they're gonna give us is the same as every year, pretty
Yeah.
much. But it's not a final until the state budget's approved.
Right, and we have to approve
But we have to approve the contract amendment.
yeah. So, we do have it on for tomorrow, and, you know, sometimes we get zipping around here and get confused. If it works for you to be here tomorrow, great. If not, we can take action. I don't have any questions.
Okay,
I don't.
all right,
So,
great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
good to go.
Okay.
Thanks,
Do I get
Beth.
applause like Jennifer got?
Jake's the one who wore a costume.
So, we have Marla and Caitlin here. I'm going to go ahead, Jake, if you don't mind, and have them come on up. Morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Morning.
So before you today, there's a grant agreement for the Child Abuse and Multidisciplinary Intervention Grant. This grant comes from the Department of Justice Crime Victim Services Division. It's a grant for $52,372.72 for a 2-year period. So it runs from July 1st of this year through June of 2019. The grant comes to the district attorney's office for the district attorney and staff to coordinate what we call MDT, the multidisciplinary team, which is various community partners, DHS, community corrections, all the police departments, to have a team approach to dealing with child abuse intervention. I'm not exactly sure how long we've been giving this grant, but I know we've gotten it for the past 2 bienniums, I believe. The funds, the primary purpose is to support what's called the Child Abuse Investigative Center. So for Lake County, Klamath Lake CARES, which CARES is another acronym for Child Abuse Response and Evaluation Services, provide services for assessment and evaluation of child abuse cases. So we have a subcontract with them to do those services for $20,000 for each calendar year. And there's also funds within the grant to support training for MDT members because there are certain standards within the Oregon Revised Statutes for members to attend child abuse focused training. And then there's also a small amount of funds for office supplies and administrative funds, so.
So is this, and I won't put you on the spot, Caitlin, but we have Ann here. Is this in our budget?
It is in our budget. We did anticipate this grant coming back through our DA's office. It's in its own fund. It's in Fund 208.
Okay.
This originated many years ago for a half-time position.
Right.
Now it's been able to be more fully funded. Am I correct on that, Ann?
That's a different victims grant.
Okay.
This is the
This
county
is
funds.
This is the new one.
Yeah, so
This is what we used to have in the past that just did the MDT
Mhm.
and climate cares.
So, and Commissioner, I met with Marlon and Caitlin this morning just on a couple of Scrivener errors that they had already caught, I believe. Just the name of the person on the grant will be corrected from Deanna Murphy to whoever is appropriate, and then have Lake County, you mentioned Lake County, Caitlin caught, so.
Okay.
on the first page of the actual grant agreement.
Okay. Well, very good. We have it on tomorrow to take action on it, so. That's what we'll do.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so
thank you
much.
very much.
And they've sent it to legal counsel for review and everything. I don't know that you have to be in the meeting tomorrow. So, do they need to be down?
I don't think so. I thought you said.
I got all the information I
Okay.
need.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just gonna sit right here if that's okay.
Oh, you bet.
All right.
You're down there now.
Which one?
Do you have the agenda with you?
I do.
Okay, just,
So the first one is our Goodwin electronic home detention contract. There's no real fiscal impact. It's gonna vary depending on how much we use, how often we use it. As long as it's sitting on the shelf, there's no cost associated with our contract. However, once we turn it on and we put it on someone's ankle, set them up on GPS monitoring, then we start getting billed. We budgeted, I believe we budgeted $10,000 this fiscal year for that. I don't believe we're gonna use that much because the cost that they charge us is pretty minimal. And then we'll be charging our clients a small fee, $3 to $6 depending on which bracelet they have. Goodwin came out, I met with them. Harney County uses them and is very, very happy with their service. And the way it is able to track folks in over in Harney County, given their terrain is similar to ours. So I chose to go with this program. They're based out of Portland. Their home outfit, I believe, is in Pennsylvania, but they have offices in Washington and Oregon, and the closest one to us would be in Hillsborough. So I anticipate them coming down and training us to utilize this and giving us the tools so we can find out how fast people drive from here to Paisley.
yeah, that'll be an interesting thing. We'll make copies of that for future reference.
So, again, it's contract with Goodwin. We're hoping to enter into that. They'll provide additional sanctions for us as far as, besides jail and community service work, we'll have an additional sanction. It also provides additional monitoring to some of our high-risk clients, so we know where they're at and what they're doing at all times.
Great.
So the monitoring part of it, we've done some of this years ago,
Yeah.
different, on and off, even before your time, but your PO officers and years ago track it right on the computer
Yeah.
where they're at.
Yeah, Once we set them up, we'll have access to it over our phones, and also our desktops. Yeah, we'll know where they're at. We can.
Oh, very good.
Okay.
Very good. Yeah. Okay, next.
Then the next item is the Klamath Lake Community Action Services. Historically, for our firewood program, the senior center managed all that. They had the contract with Community Action to provide the heating assistance program. For whatever reason, the senior center chose not to renew that contract this year. So Community Action has hired their own employee, set up an office over in the Mary's building, and they contacted us about the firewood program to see what we were doing and how we were doing it, because they have monies available for energy assistance. And they were pretty adamant about paying us for their clients to get firewood. The way it's outlined is everybody that meets that criteria is eligible for 1 quart of wood. They can reapply for a 2nd quart of wood, but that's it. So for every quart of wood, they're interested in paying us $125. There's $10 for stacking, and another $10 for deliveries 50 miles outside of Lakeview. So having said that, there's a potential for some monies. I know we've had this conversation historically last winter about the 3-quart limit. That's still going to apply to these folks. They'll get 2 quarts. If they get 2 quarts from Community Action, if they need a 3rd quart, depending on how harsh our winter is, we'll give them a 3rd quart, and then that's their limit.
And so that'll be, as you said, we had that discussion in here
Yeah.
last spring, that'll be well understood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll get paid for 2 quarts, and we'll give them a 3rd quart free if they need it.
Well, given the change in weather, just as a follow-up question, is everyone that typically is on that, that has been using that program, are they aware of it now?
They're not. They're still calling, folks are calling us wanting firewood, and we're referring them back to Community Action.
But I mean, as far as the limits on
The
the,
3 limits, I believe most of them are aware of it. We haven't had anybody screaming up and down that they want 9 quart.
no, but I can just see that mid-January, people are in here saying, we had no idea that there was a limit. Is
Well, we fielded some phone calls by now. This time last year, we were knee deep in deliveries.
Yeah.
And we haven't had as many phone calls and delivery requests as this year than we did last year. So I'm assuming people, the word spread like wildfire, so I'm assuming folks have got out and got some firewood.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of things, just exactly what Dan's saying, this educational part on what the policy between DOC and your group, us, and everything is maximum 3 quart if available. That needs to get out there, some kind of notice or something, so everybody knows that, so we don't run into that again. Second thing is, we just got done with our PM advancement on our air quality. And I would like for you to touch base with the town, and whoever delivers the wood, they get the notice and the guidelines for the PM advancement, for the yellow, red days and all that, because that was part of their plan, their 5-year plan, is the educational side of it. So would you please
Check
check?
handout or something?
Yeah, check with the town, and then whenever, if we're gonna be giving out the firewood, and we also have this air quality thing, maybe we ought to be doing our educational side of it at the
Sure.
same time. And
Okay.
so, I believe Don Turner is the one at the town,
Okay.
I believe, but check with them. And that was part of the whole PM advancement plan, so if you would, I think that would be due diligence on our part.
You know, we can do that. So with the monies that we bring in through Community Actions as part of this grant, because DOC also has wear and tear on their vans and their chainsaws, we'll be entering, and I'll bring that back to the board, we'll be entering into an MOU with Warner Creek, just to split them, any monies that we have come in, we'll split the cost. We'll split
See
that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna obviously gonna have wear and tear, but they will too.
Yeah.
So just to keep it fair.
Very good, Jake.
All right.
We'll take action on those items tomorrow. I didn't see where you had anything else for today.
And we have Department Justice Program Enhancement Grant.
Oh, yeah, I just saw county treasurer.
This is a grant that, it's a federal grant that the hospital, Ann and I worked on collectively. And we awarded that grant in the sum of $400,000 for 3 years. So before you is the contract to sign entering into that, allowing us to access those monies. And I believe those monies don't just come to us, I believe it's reimbursable, so every quarter we submit. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I don't, it can be more often than quarterly. So this is for treatment court.
Treatment court, right.
Expansion and enhancement. We'll actually add more mental health therapists. Can you talk about the positions, Jake, again?
Sure. It'll add a .4 FTE to a court PO position. It'll add hours to our treatment court coordinator. It adds a .4 FTE CADC1, so that's a certified alcohol drug counselor. And then it also adds a .4 mental health therapist to our treatment court. Because historically, the hospital has just kind of been in kind, allowing their therapists to be part of our program and not getting compensated for it. So we threw some positions in there for them. And then it also allows for some training, some office supplies, and then 10% of the total for admin costs, which will, I'm not going to be, community justice isn't going to be requesting those admin costs. I'm requesting that Lake County treasurer and then the hospital split those admin costs because of the work they did on the grant program as well.
So all these positions is within the grant. So you don't have to do no formal RFP or anything. You can, by the grant, you just give it to those entities that you talked
It's
about.
specific to our treatment court. So the Wellness Center is the only program that's been with our treatment court from day one because other therapists had withdrawn from that
Very
program.
good.
So I'm not doing something else. I'm looking at the email that we received yesterday on another item. And while you're here, I'd like you to speak to that. It's just wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the supplemental grant that we wrote for additional funding to help our district attorney hire a deputy DA. And we
Yeah.
awarded that. We got the final. We got
Well,
the award on Friday, but I wasn't here. So
It really jumps out, Jake. It says, while there were counties that received cuts in their supplemental budgets in order to get us down to the 7 million allocation, Lake was not one of them. You will all receive your full 210,000 from the DDA. And then the extra victim, 10%. Thank you.
well, I believe a lot of those monies they had to go back and ask for cuts for were administrative costs. Other counties were asking for administrative costs,
Well,
but nevertheless,
anytime a small county, rural county can display its value to the folks across the hills in such a way that we aren't one of the ones that receive reductions, but we actually see program enhancements, it speaks well to the staff and to the department heads that are running those programs and making those things happen on behalf of all of our citizens. So you have a future in politics, my friend.
I don't believe so. Thank you, Bill. So, also before you, I handed out just kind of our grant money breakdown. I don't think we need to go through that. I just wanted to make sure you guys, the board was aware of how those monies were being spent, so there wasn't any supplanting or double over or doubling up. Exactly how those monies are being spent. And the total grant funding for 2 to 3 years, the federal grant's a 3-year grant, the other grants are 2-year grants. It comes to a total of $992,000. So,
Impressive.
So what do we have to budget right now to take these grant dollars in and anything? Do we have to do anything?
We budgeted for the Department of Justice federal grant, we budgeted for the state treatment court grant. The supplemental DA grant, we have not budgeted for, so that will require a resolution to bring those dollars in. But Jake's done some great work on this, and then moving forward, we'll all be working together to kind of sort through with the hospital costs for these programs and then getting reimbursed quickly on all these things, so.
Right.
Very good.
So is that email mentioned on the supplemental funding, Commissioner? The grant, or the award, formal award letter, and the contract should be received this week.
Good.
So we'll be back in a couple weeks, and I've worked with
Well,
Marla
we
Slay.
won't be here in a couple of weeks, but. I don't know.
In 2 weeks? We'll bring it back in 2 weeks.
There won't be another meeting in November. Our next meeting will be the first part of December.
That's fine, we can wait till then. That'll give Marla and our district attorney some time to put together the job description and work with Jay
Yeah,
to get that finalized.
okay. Okay, thank you. So we've got everybody here that, I'm gonna go ahead and ask the sheriff and the undersheriff if they wanna go ahead and cover their items.
We can post it anytime. Because we're going to get the money, so we can post it anytime. Morning, Commissioner.
Lauren?
Morning.
This is in regards to a promotion in the corrections facility from corporal to sergeant. The general purpose of this recommendation is serves as an immediate supervisor for the corrections deputies in the enforcement of the laws, jail standards, investigation, court directives, safety, security, issues involving care and custody of inmates, and diminishes the liability to the county. We've done a cost analysis on this, and it will cost anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 a year. We're not asking for any additional dollars because we can sustain this within our budget. I had talked to, or Under Sheriff Pavel and I have each talked to you individually about this proposal, and each of you have agreed and supported it at that time. I hope that at this time that you'll continue supporting us and approve this recommendation.
Well, the only thing I'd say on it, Sheriff, and that isn't a huge amount of money, is what this statement I made earlier about our budget, and which happened, and I chatted with you briefly about it, because you were gonna come before us with another proposal. We're right now staring down the barrel of what we believe will be a $300,000 to $350,000 reduction. So we have to be mindful of how we're gonna make that up. So any of our budgets that show that we can do things within them that, you know, would be an addition and an ongoing cost, I think they're all up for evaluation before we do anything. That's my take on this, because every dollar's gonna count.
Understand that, but it's our budget, we can sustain it within our budget. We're not asking for another penny.
Oh, no, I understand that, Sheriff, but what I'm saying is,
I
your budget,
understand what you're saying, but
we're all in this together when it comes to general fund dollars. And if we have to cut out of this year's budget $350,000 of planned expenditures, that's gonna have to come from all of our general fund budgets. It's not a singular budget that
Commissioner
is.
Town, I just sat here and watched you propose an out-of-budget raise for another individual. I'm telling you, we can sustain this.
That's within planned, already planned expenditures of non-general fund funds that we
So-
just did. I'm just telling you where I'm at, Sheriff.
Well, I know where you are, and I know where Commissioner Winters
Just
is.
to explain one thing, the building department, we pay $22,000 a year for a building official. We just now have a non-staff building official for about $5,000 more a year. That's a savings of almost $17,000. In a fund that carries the enterprise fund.
So let me ask
So
you this.
it's not
Commissioner.
comparable on that.
If I took this $8,000 and spent it on equipment throughout this budget cycle, you wouldn't be saving that money.
We
it would be
wouldn't be,
spent
but
within
we have to be able to work together on this. This
I
isn't just for
understand
the
that.
whole county.
But we have been fiscally responsible for the last 3 years. We have turned in $90,000 the first year. We have turned in $120,000 the second year, and we turned in $160,000 the third year. $8,000 is not asking too much of the commissioners to go along with an agreement that you already agreed to.
This was pre-pill payment discussion. That whole discussion, I shared that with you. I got with you specifically to tell you
Yes,
my
you talked
concerns.
about the Oregon Emergency Management, which we're not even asking for. We understand that. We understand that we're not asking for monies outside of what the budget can support. So we're not coming to you for that extra position that you also promised. We're asking you to just support within our budget a promotion, $8,000 a year. That's not gonna break the bank.
So, a question I have on your 8,000, I don't know how that's originated or how that comes about, but looking through your corrections officers, their highest step, how much above their highest step are you asking for the sergeant's position?
It'd either be $6,000 to $8,000, depending on who gets promoted. Because you have a pay scale of one employee that's a higher step, it would only cost $6,000. If that promotion went to the lower step person, it would be $8,000.
Well, I guess you're moving from a union employee to an exempt management position that's salaried.
That's correct.
And so you have union positions, and we go to their top step. Don't talk about any individual employees. Top step is this amount. How much over that top step are you wanting to make the sergeant's position? 5%, 10%, 4%, 3%?
We didn't break it down in percentages, it's basically a $60,000. So the only two people that are gonna have the option to move up is one of our two corporals. And so we took off their base wage. Jay Collins did some analysis through other counties to try to get like salaries. And a $60,000 salary for that position was very supported by the numbers that he got. And so one of the employees made $52,000 last year, so it would be an $8,000 increase, and one of them made $54,000 last year, so that would be a $6,000 increase.
Well, but I read the accounts payable pretty often, and I look at amount of overtime. And employees, one month they have 12 hours overtime, the next month they have 20 hours overtime.
But we based that off of a year.
So I struggle with a position being inclusive of overtime to set your salary range. I guess is where I'm struggling a little bit. I go back to union contract and I look at top step, and then I think what above the top step to go into an exempt position, what would that cost? For me, that's only sort of the only fair way to look at it, because of, as I watch the employees and the amount of overtime, it changes all the time. It depends on the people's availability and this and that. So thank you if you went back a year's worth of time.
Well,
to
that
look
was
at
a
that.
12-year gross on their wages. So there was months in there that they had overtime, there was months that they didn't have overtime.
So with your structure of a sergeant, if you're looking at it inclusive of overtime, will they still be covered in shifts?
Yes.
And will you have a trigger that they will do a minimum amount of those shifts so that we don't end up paying more overtime over here for other employees that are doing the cover, because now we have an exempt person that's not going to take on as much overtime? I guess that's some of the semantics that I question is how do you make sure that you're not going to be adding more overtime to other employees that takes that 5,000 or 8,000, whatever the number comes out, and it grows over here where we're not really tracking it as much.
It'd be the same reason same way we manage the patrol exempt positions. When there's a call out that is needed for a South End person, Under Sheriff Pablo, myself, or Sergeant Campbell respond to it usually, and that absorbs 0 overtime costs. It'd be the same with the jail commander. If you have to, with the sergeant in corrections. If you have a shift that needs to be covered, instead of covering or calling in a union employee for overtime costs, that exempt employee will cover that shift.
There'll still be some limitations though, because it's a 24-hour facility. So I can't expect anybody, let alone the corrections sergeant, to put in his 12-hour day shift, and now if somebody calls in sick on a graveyard, I'm not gonna ask him to cover a 24-hour shift.
Sure,
I mean, so there's still gonna be cause for overtime, and there's still gonna be vacation and holidays and sick leave and other issues, but absolutely, that would be a working sergeant's position that will cover shifts as they're available.
That's the part I'm honestly struggling with, is how that is, the checks and balances there, and for, I guess where I went whenever I went right to the union contract. I went to the top step and figured how much it would be over that. I wasn't thinking that we take people's overtime, that'd be part of their base salary, because it's really not. That's above and beyond, those hours worked above and beyond a time and a half. So now we're looking at a year's time inclusive of time and a half cost to start the base salary for that position. So I'm struggling with that.
But I don't know, we're basing that salary based on parity. What is the sergeant's position in patrol? It's X number of dollars. A deputy's position compared to a corrections deputy's position, there's like a 6%, 7% difference in pay. We base that on parity. The corrections sergeants will be 6% difference than the patrol sergeant to keep that equitable. So in my opinion, it has nothing to do with overtime. It has to do with parity. And I'll say this, that for the exempt positions, the county gets more than the bang for the buck. Under Sheriff Hobble here works almost 16 hours a day. Now, I'm not going to tell him he can't. I'm not going to tell him he can. I work more than 8 hours a day. Sergeant Campbell works more than 8 hours a day, and I'm assuming the minimum time that the corrections sergeant will put in is an 80-hour work week. They will work more than 80 hours a week.
So many a week?
I'm sorry, 80 hours of pay cut.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah, I apologize. So the county is getting more than the bang for the buck. They're saving money with these exempt positions.
Well, Sheriff, I look at both sides of it, and now I will flip over and I will talk the other side. As I look at the amount of time that and I'll go with the road side. We have Sergeant Luke Campbell at the salary. And then I look at the overtime that several of our deputies are getting, that he makes quite a bit less than they do, almost on a monthly basis. And I won't name, but there's at least two that usually exceed what he makes on overtime. So that's where my concern comes in, is sometimes we make these exempt positions and we do use them as much as we can, but the other side continues to grow also. So as you know me, I look at a lot of numbers, I do a lot of things in my head. That's my sickness, that's what I do. That's take me who I am. But that's the other side that I worry about too, is as we look at these sergeants' positions, under sheriff's positions, and these other ones, is we have to make sure that they're not overworked also, you know. So that's the other side. I debate both sides of it, as where this is work session to talk these things through and that. So I try to analyze it both ways. Our employees are number one to us here. We think a lot of our employees. So I want it to be fair whenever we go there.
I'd like to address that overtime issue, Commissioner. Overtime is only authorized by myself or under Sheriff Hobble or Sergeant Campbell. It's not just a willy-nilly, we're going to go work whenever we want to work. We don't have enough resources. And that's why you're seeing an exorbitant amount of overtime. When citizen calls for a deputy, and it's something that we feel they need to go to, we send them to it. If we had more resources, we wouldn't have the overtime. So the overtime is a situation that we are going to have to absorb, this county's going to have to absorb as long as we have the few number of deputies that we have. There's just no way of getting around it. You have 3 exempt patrol people, and for the most part, Under Sheriff Hall and I work 7 days a week. Even on our days off, if you can call them days off, we are working. So there is really no getaway from this job. There's no days off. So when we can't do what we do every 7 days a week, you have to call people out, especially North Lake. North Lake is exploding with calls. If I had another deputy, that'd be the first place I send them, is North Lake. These 3 people up there don't get a break. Their days off, they're working. Their time off, they're working. They go home from work, they're called out 4 or 5 hours later. The overtime is going to grow higher and higher because the calls for service are becoming more and more. Like I explained to you during budget time, our call load the last 10 years has increased 500%. Our number of deputies has increased 0. So what do we have to do? We have to evaluate that. What are our priorities? We're going to have to reduce the calls for service. We're going to have to reduce what we offer to the citizens, or we need more resources. There's just no getting around that.
Well, and I appreciate that, and we're getting sort of sidetracked, but I would like to know what the underlying reason for that number of call increase is. What are we missing on maybe something else why our calls are increasing that amount? I mean, is it a meth problem? Is it, what problem is underlying that our calls are going up, you say?
It's an increase in population, not a lot, but there's an increase in population. There's a extraordinary increase in mental health issues, and there's an increase in drug issues. And now with the state minimizing the drug charges from felonies to misdemeanors, there's no accountabilities, there's no ramifications. So it's a revolving door. You arrest, you put them in jail, they're out. They're committing the same crime 2 hours later. Arrest, put them in jail, they're out. They're committing the same crime 3 hours later. It's just a revolving door.
That had a huge cost to the citizens. Exactly. I myself am frustrated with that. I see the revolving door. I mean, it's unbelievable. So the sergeant's position, that's where I'm at is, I guess I'd like to talk with Jay and you guys and see how you came up with that. You went with the yearly base amount of these 2, you say there's 2 qualified in-house?
But we would have to go to the corporal's positions, and we have 2 corporals in corrections.
Okay, so would you continue 2 corporal positions and a sergeant?
No.
No. You want
Yeah, 1 corporal, 1 sergeant. And the corporals, they get more than the standard wage now.
Yes.
So that would,
So one of the things that we used in our wage breakdown on this was that, one, if they go exempt, they actually get a different insurance than what they had before, which I know we've looked at this in the past, where it's actually taking money away from the person that got the promotion. And so that was our goal, is this needs to be enticing to want to do it, and it needs to have some sort of a financial gain to it to get interest. And Jay ran the numbers. Jay did his research with other counties and found that this was well within line of that, and it would allow for some steps in there. But I don't think that, I don't know what percentage we settled on, but the actual dollars to the person's pocket is not going to be what we're requesting the increase to be, because the insurance rates go up considerably when they go out of that union versus the other union. So.
okay, so my next question is as we approve the undersheriff position, Paul's position, we take a certain percentage out of the jail side to pay his wages. what's that structure? How's that going to change with the sergeant's position? Are we going to see through, we've had these discussions, this is for you to, Paul, I'm talking to you directly, Paul, relinquish some of these duties in the jail. Will the sergeants start taking some of those over? Will we be seeing your wages changed, all primarily coming out of the roadside? Will it still be half of it coming out of the correction side? I know it's all general fund dollars, it's two separate departments, so what would we expect to see at budget time?
So I think absolutely, that's the intent behind this, is to get some of this off of my plate. So I guess it could seem self-serving, if you will, but ultimately.
No, I think that it's not self-serving,
That's
that's
right.
direction from the
That's
board of
right.
commissioners.
Because somewhere in here, I'm gonna jump back in, because I think the sheriff was a little frazzled with just me asking a question earlier. We were approached with an undersheriff position, and we said, you betcha. We were approached by two corporal positions that would essentially do at that time what we're talking about, a sergeant position doing now, and we said, you bet. We were approached about the sergeant patrol position, and we said, you bet. So, you know, we do need some clarity as we go to a new step in having a sergeant in the jail, that it actually is going to accomplish what you originally told us the corporals were going to accomplish.
And so what we found, and not to go there back, but we had a conversation in an evaluation that we talked about where we didn't have the flexibility or the latitude with our corporals that we had hoped, because they were still union positions. And so because of the way that they bid for shifts up there, it didn't allow the flexibility to have those off hours covered by another person, so it was still falling back on me. And so ultimately, that's what the intent here is. Now, I don't think that we have another person that can turnkey, they're just a jail commander tomorrow. There's gonna be a training level that needs to happen here, because I don't think that we have somebody that can take the keys to the kingdom and just run with it. I'm more than happy to let go of the reins and let somebody else drive the cart, but there's gonna have to be a level of training that goes on prior to that just happening.
Yep, along those lines too, this is down the road to succession planning. What are going to be the dynamics of the sheriff's office in a year? If I'm gone, who's going to be the sheriff? My guess is Under Sheriff Hobble is going to take those ranks. Who's going to be the undersheriff? So not only is this planning for the improvement in the effectiveness and efficiency of the sheriff's office, it's a succession planning process too. It's putting people in place that are going to be able to take over the reins in a year from now. So it's not just a self-serving proposition on my part to get become top-heavy in administration. You have to think that what the county fails to look at is liability. Liability is huge in the sheriff's office. The jail is one of the biggest liabilities we have. It's become a mental health holding facility. We arrest people, they shouldn't be in jail, they're mentally ill. We got people defecating in there and dressing up for Halloween already. They're painting on the walls. We can't get them out here, the hospital won't take them. The likelihood of suicide in that facility is extremely high. With supervisory personnel up there, it reduces and diminishes the liability to the county. When you were in the Forest Service and you were just a ground person and you had a supervisor there, you told the line more so and did things right when a supervisor was there as opposed to that supervisor not being there. That's what we're trying to accomplish here.
Well, and Sheriff, I think all of us clearly understand that. My concern, as I said before, was I know we didn't get there with the corporals, but that's what we signed off on. So we're just simply asking some questions relative to, are we going to get there with the sergeant position? We've had that discussion today, so I don't think you get any disagreement, because we've been on board with this notion and related to liability and oversight in the jail all along. There isn't any argument, there's no disagreement.
Well, this,
This whole
the
discussion
corporals
was
don't
around.
have any teeth in their body.
Well, no, I understand that. When we first approved it, I don't think we approved it with that knowledge. It was later that you pointed out to us that that was the case because of the union positions, et cetera. But that ship sailed, that's in our rearview mirror. We're talking now about the future and what the needs are. I don't think you have any disagreement that a sergeant position would be warranted and necessary and good for the county. I simply brought up, the only part of this discussion I brought up, and I've been enjoying the discussion on a salary versus the true cost of that employee with the overtime added on, what the additional money is. I'm just trying to be, as one commissioner, I'm trying to be responsible to a almost certain huge deficit in our revenue this year that we have to take care of. While 6,000 or 8,000 may seem pretty trivial, every dollar that we don't spend may come into play to make up and balance us out at the end of the year. We may have to bite the bullet somewhere else in order to accomplish getting the sergeant position done this year. So it's merely for discussion. It's not a you against me or me against you. It's just me trying to be responsible from all aspects in what your needs are in having a sergeant in the jail for our supervision, our liability, all of those types of things, and me being responsible for my role in making sure you have the tools you have, but at the same time we have the money to pay for it as a county.
And that's exactly why we're not asking for additional funding. We're asking to do it within our budget. We understand the responsibility, and we understand that we have a deficit.
Well, but let's just be clear on this, because I think we're, and I appreciate the fact that you're looking at your specific budget. I'm looking at all the general fund budgets, because quite frankly, the OEM position was built into our contingency. So we're not looking, if we were to add that, as adding more cost above what we budgeted for. So it's the same scenario, and while I say that, it's contrary to what, from your view, what we would be saying. It's not adding additional costs, we've already budgeted for it. What I'm saying is a lot of things we budgeted for, we may not have the revenue to match it here shortly. We made a revenue projection too when we made a budget projection for expense. And all I'm saying is that that revenue may not be there through no fault of ours.
We could disagree on this until the cows come home.
Yeah.
But it's just frustrating to me for the last 3 years that the Board of Commissioners has agreed, yeah, we agree you can have this, we agree you can have this, we agree you can have this. And then when it comes time to do it, no, we can't do it for one reason or another. Biggest frustration, the OEM position, extra deputy position. We have asked during budget time, and you haven't agreed. And then when it comes time, in fact, the budget committee has agreed. When it comes time for implementation, there's one reason or another as to why we can't do it. Okay, well, I get that. There's budget issues, and this year there's a budget issue. So it's just frustrating for me to see a new position made, and then we can operate within our budget, but it's a crisis. I don't get it.
Boy, we aren't on the same wavelength at all.
Evidently, we're not.
I don't agree with your assessment of that at all.
Yes, sir, I don't agree with you.
Yeah, well, this year, we approved a partly funded new position. We put those monies, just like we did with the nuisance position, into the contingency until the liaison could work with the department head and human resources and develop the position description. And along came this unknown, I'm not going to go into all the SRS and the prior year payment stuff, but what the impact would be to us. Dan went back to DC, as everyone knows, in September, and got that validated, that we're looking down at a significant reduction here in Lake County for our general fund resources this year. And that's not any fault of anybody's, but that's the, You know,
Well,
it's
I'm certainly not putting blame on anybody.
No, but it's so interesting. There hasn't been anything that I know of, an emergency $25,000 expense for communication between dispatch and here. We said, you bet. We figured out how to do it. I don't know of anything that we've refused to do. I honestly don't. And you're sitting here saying that we've been doing
Am I
that.
missing something here?
I don't think you guys are understanding what one another is saying.
Well, I guess not. I mean, we have been asked about a lot of things, and I don't drive in your lane, so I don't know what your needs are. I respect the position.
Well,
And
Commissioner,
when you've
we are
asked for
telling you
that,
right now, this is a need.
Oh,
This is
I-
a need, and if you don't understand it, how can you deny it?
I understand it. That's what I just said. Because I understood it in the context of two corporals. That ship is now sailed, as I said. We found out that those don't work for what your needs are. So the sergeant position will work. That's what you're telling
It will
me.
work for a supervisory position.
And that's what I'm saying. I want to support that. My only hangup is any expenditures that we make that are new, not new to your budget, but new. We're gonna have to make that up somewhere in all likelihood. It's $300,000 to $350,000.
See, that's where I'm not understanding where you're coming. How are you going to have to make that up if it's coming out of our budget? I'm not following that.
Because it's a fixed cost moving forward.
Yeah,
It's a
But
salary
If you
that
give
will
us
grow.
$10 a year, and we spend $5 a year, and then next year it's $11 a year, and we spend $6 a year, at some time down the road, I get it, it's going to be over the top, but that's not going to be, if we're returning on the average, $150,000 a year, it's going to take 20 years for this, maybe even longer than that, for this to go
I
over
think
that.
that's where the disconnect is, Sheriff. We budget yearly, all general fund departments. We encourage everybody to come in under their budgets because that gives us money enough to rebudget the next year. So you don't, say you turn back 150,000, that's not sitting there for you to use the next year. It's rebudgeted every
It
year.
goes right back into the general fund.
Right,
again.
and so, appreciate all that, that's the way we all should work, is, and there's two sides to that. Some people would say there's too much fluff in your budget, other people would say you've done a really good job budgeting and staying within your budget. But every year, we reallocate that. If we come in this year on our projected revenue, 350,000 short, and we've already budgeted for the full amount of our projected revenue, we come in $350,000 short, we're short that in general fund, period, end of story. But we've already budgeted and put those fixed costs in that operation in there. So we may have to go to every general fund department and say, we need a 15% cut. We might need a 20% cut, might need 5%. That's what happens. Our budget is our best guess. Best guess. And that's, I think that comes right out of the budgeting world, is our budgets are our best guess. And this year, our best guess may come in short on the projected revenue stream. So that's just what we have to deal with as a budget committee and as a board of commissioners. I'm hopeful that doesn't happen, but there's some projections out there that says it will.
well, right now, in all likelihood it will, but Ann had a comment.
It is hard to look at those expenses at June 30th and say that that amount of money was returned to general fund, because that's contingent on every single dollar of revenue that we budgeted for coming in. And we know there's grant dollars that we budget for that we don't receive, whether we haven't billed for them, whether we haven't worked them, whether we didn't get the grant. So to look at that expense total at the end of June and say, oh, I turned that money back, is not the full story. There's another side that has to be accounted for.
Well, I can tell you this, we didn't spend it.
But we didn't receive it either. So to say you turned it back is not completely true.
Well,
Thank you for not spending it,
I guess
but
what
we have a
could
revenue
do,
issue too.
if we have $2.5 million in our budget, we could go up there and spend $2.5 million and just spend, not be fiscally responsible, just spend it as well.
Well, not exactly true, because we're talking on the salary side, and we adopt a category. So salary side is one part of your budget, your materials and services are another. So I understand what you're saying, but we adopt that way for a reason, so that you can't just take your, if you have extra dollars in your salary side and just go buy a new vehicle or guns or whatever. We adopt by category for that reason, Sheriff. And so if you come in under on your salary side, that's great, but that's only can be spent on salary unless we do a resolution and move it by the Board of Commissioners. Now, I want to get back. We've had some good discussions, some budgetary discussions and everything. Get back to the sergeant's position. I support the sergeant's position. My question is right to Paul, to you guys, is what's it going to look like in the jail side and the patrol side for Paul's budget, for his wages? Are we going to move that around? What is that going to do? I'd rather know that now than get into budget time and we see all of a sudden, oh, well, over here on the sheriff's side, his budget went up another $30,000 because they're absorbing Paul over here, and we have this into the jail side. I want to know what that's going to look like. I've been one for a long time saying, Paul, let go. You need to have somebody take over some of these duties in the jail side. I'm on board with that, the sergeant's position to do that. I'm skeptical on taking and basing the salary inclusive of all the overtime for two positions. I wonder if we threw everybody in the pot from that department up there for 12 months and came out what the average salary was, and then go 3, 5, whatever percent above that. I don't know if we're taking our two highest paid people and basing, setting the salary from there. That's just the way I work my numbers in my head, is how did we get to there? You know, I want to make sure that we do it right, fair to the employee and fair to the county at the same time. Sheriff, I think on the budget side of it, we're all a team. Since we get Ruby pipeline dollars, we get right around $3 million into general fund roughly. Before that, we got 1.9 million. Your two budgets is 2.5 million. That's a lot of money. A lot of money. That's what we look at also. So if we don't get the federal dollars that enhance our property tax dollars, it's hard to sustain those kind of budgets. There's a whole lot that comes into the whole general fund operations.
Well, maybe, and we need to probably get refocused on the sergeant position request, but I need to just throw out some complementary things to that discussion. It is just over $3 million, 3.4. And that's in our revenue we receive from our citizens through property tax. So when we talk about the sheriff jail budget, which typically is the most expensive in any county, it's 74% of our available revenue. So it is important that we remember if we just simply said, Sheriff, we have $2.5 million in revenue that is yours to spend on your $2.5 million in expense for this year, regardless of how much is not spent during the course of the year. And then we get to this point, and the forewarning was ahead of this. Most counties, they're ignoring it, and shame on them. What's this training's coming down the track. But so within that 2.5 of revenue that's supporting your program for us as a county, we lose $350,000. How do we make that up? And I'm not going to ask you to make it up out of just the sheriff's budget. It's a county-wide general fund problem. So that's my whole point with this, is it's not just you, it's not just the commissioner's budget, it's not just any one of the budgets. The reality is, we're going to have to make it up as a county. So I will stop talking about that, because I think you explained my concern as much as need be. And I will say, as Commissioner Winters just said, I wasn't just 2 months ago when we sat and talked about this, but even through this new revelation of reduced revenue, I supported the sergeant position because I was confident that you guys had looked at this well enough beyond the corporal positions to know that this would solve a lot of problems that we prior thought would be solved with corporals. But that's not going to happen in this scenario. So it's just a matter now of just boiling it down to, no matter how we evaluate the additional increase in cost for a sergeant position, that we can all come to agreement and move on. But we have to be mindful, since we've had this discussion, and it's not, we don't have all the general fund departments in here, but we're gonna be looking at meetings as a county to be able to save on costs to the tune of $300,000 to $350,000. I am confident right now, unfortunately, that's what we're gonna be faced with. And we can't wait till May or June to try and figure that out. It'll be too late.
What is, do you know, what's the beginning fund balance been the last few years?
It's been decreasing over time because we have more personnel costs that are going up at a higher rate than our revenue is increasing. So it's been decreasing over time. I think this last year, if you're asking off the top of my head, I'm gonna say it's around 2 million. My projection right now, my June 30th, 2018 projection right now with the PILT revenue that we're looking at, it's at 1.6. So it's a $400,000 cut for this fiscal year, but then moving forward, we're having to make that up on that beginning fund balance too.
To the next, yeah.
It's a significant,
Well, and then our,
and until we get any information out of DC, that's the best information we have to operate on. We're talking about people's livelihoods. That's what makes me nervous. When we're looking at those kinds of revenue decreases, because we are a service organization, we're looking at people's jobs.
well, and there's other times I know to have these discussions, but you just hit upon increasing costs. The PERS,
Oh
the
my,
state legislature, I mean, they're looking at an astronomical cost to counties and schools and other entities that we're gonna have to absorb with less revenue.
this
and
6
still
to 8,000
provide
is not 6 to 8,000. Because that's, the 6 to 8,000
Oh,
is
no.
not 6 to 8,000,
No.
because that's just the salary. It's not the benefits on top of it.
And if
That
we
will
were,
increase.
if we were looking at significant carryover and significant contingency that's way up and none of this reduction in revenues that we were facing, we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
And
Because
maybe-
our past track record shows we wouldn't be having this discussion. We've approved everything that's came before us without having anybody feel like they had to go above and beyond to get us to agree. We said, you need it, we'll support it. So,
Okay, I'd appreciate it if you just take it under consideration.
definitely.
Do you have any?
Thank you.
Do you need to know if we're adding that to tomorrow? Do you want to get back to me?
Okay. Thank you for the reminder. I would like to take a break. I just got in here. So we'll take
Maybe a little
a,
lesson on economics.
let's take a, if everyone's okay with it, let's take a 10 minute.
Bob, I see.